What kind of crime would you need to commit in order to have an entire prison all to yourself? Whether by fate or by design, these prisoners managed to find themselves in the ultimate solitary confinement. Spandau Prison. The Nuremberg trials saw many of the most terrible German war criminals from World War II face the consequences for their actions. Among them were 7 prisoners sentenced to life at Spandau Prison, a compound designed to hold 600 people. But as 6 of those 7 were released or passed away, Rudolf Hess was eventually left as the only inmate. Hess had been Deputy Führer of Germany at the start of the war and was one of Hitler's closest political allies. He was imprisoned despite his famously ill-fated rogue solo flight to Scotland in 1941, where he attempted to make peace with the British. The stunt had few admirers, as the Soviets believed it had been staged by the British, the Germans believed he'd gone crazy, and the Americans believed it was actually a plot by Hitler. The British weren't entirely sure what to make of the ordeal and arrested Hess. Between 1954 and 1957, 4 prisoners at Spandau were released, and in 1966, 2 of the remaining 3 were freed. The prison was built in 1875 on Wilhelmstrasse on the western side of Berlin, then part of the German Empire. It served as a military prison and was later used to hold political prisoners. In 1947, the prison received its 7 Third Reich inmates. It was administered by the Allied Kommandantur, a government body set up by the victors of the Second World War. Rudolf Hess would stay at Spandau for the remaining 40 years of his life. He settled into a routine of waking up, eating breakfast, walking the garden area, eating lunch, resting, eating dinner, and going to bed. Hess was often moved between different rooms for security reasons. His practice was ended when it was feared that Hess was slowly going insane after being left as the sole inmate. At the age of 93, on August 17, 1987, he passed away in his cell. Some skeptics believe that his passing was facilitated by the government to save the money and resources directed at him. The prison was torn down only weeks after his passing, so a parking lot and shopping center could be erected. The DU Sub Jail. The DU Sub Jail was found in India and holds a single prisoner who is overseen by 5 officers. The jail was 472 years old, and the Archaeological Survey of India is in the process of converting it into a tourist spot to fuel the economy. In 2013, it was officially decided that it would be handed over after it was fully vacated. In that spirit, 4 of the 7 inmates held there would transfer to the Amreli jail, and the last 2 were released. Deepak Kanji remains, as his case is still under trial in the DU Sessions Court. The single prisoner's cell is 50 square meters and contains a blanket, a water container, and a TV that only plays Doordarshan and spiritual channels. Usually, this cell would hold 20 people. Deepak Kanji was arrested for attempted murder, allegedly having tried to poison his wife. It's still unknown whether the 30-year-old will be transferred if the court decides to imprison him, nor for how long he'll be held. The plans to turn the jail within the DU fort into a tourist spot have already begun. Some tourists are now able to access the compound. The employee is currently taking care of the facility that holds just 1, include 5 guards, 1 peon, and 1 assistant jailer. The prison island of Imrala. Imrala is a 5-mile by 2-mile or 8-kilometer by 3-kilometer island in the Sea of Marmara belonging to Turkey. It's currently forbidden by Turkish law to fly over the island or fish near its shore. From 1999 to 2009, it operated as a maximum security prison, holding only the Kurdish political prisoner Abdullah Öcalan. The island changed hands from Greece to Turkey at the end of the Turkish War of Independence in 1923. Before that, and up to 1913, the island had 3 Greek villages with a total population of 1,200 people dedicated to winemaking, producing silk, and fishing. It had 250 houses, a school, and 3 monasteries. The island was abandoned after it became a part of Turkey until the construction of a semi-open prison. In 1999, the Turkish National Intelligence Agency arrested the leader of the Kurdistan Workers' Party with assistance from the CIA after he was declared a terrorist by the European Union and the United States. This label has been contested by many Kurds who hold him in high regard. The island was vacated of all other prisoners so that Abdullah Öcalan could be incarcerated by himself. He was sentenced to death for the formation of armed organizations. His penalty was turned to an aggravated life sentence in 2004 when Turkey abolished the death penalty as part of its structural reforms to seek membership in the European Union. The Kurdish leader has spent much of his time in prison writing and publishing works on political theory, left-wing politics, Kurdish matters, and thoughts on his own imprisonment. The island received new prisoners in 2009 when a new building was acquired to increase the utility of the space. Devil's Island. The penal colony of Cayenne was a French prison complex in the Salvation Island of the French Guiana, with installations on the islands of Royal, Saint-Joseph, and Devil's Island. Originally, all three were named the Devil's Islands due to the aggressive currents that stranded early explorers in them. The name was changed when settlers found some respite in them. Beginning in 1852, the islands were turned into a penal colony, receiving over 70,000 prisoners over the years. Due to the currents, few to none could escape. The largest island, hosting the administrative center and the majority of prison cells, is Royal Island, which is 21 hectares. Saint-Joseph's was used for solitary confinement, where a strict policy of silence was enforced, regularly sending prisoners into psychotic breaks. The smallest island, Devil's Island, was used since 1894 for political prisoners and garnered the most infamy when it held an innocent man, Alfred Dreyfus. Before his arrival, the colony had a terrible reputation for commonplace violence and disease. Alfred Dreyfus was a captain for the French army when he was accused and then convicted in 1894 of spying for the Germans. His conviction is now believed to have been a mistake rooted in anti-Semitism. From 1894 to 1899, Dreyfus was the only prisoner on Devil's Island, completely isolated from all communication and unaware of the effect his imprisonment had had on France. The guards feared that they would be attacked by passing ships sent to free him, so they would often hold him at gunpoint while they passed by. At times he was allowed to walk around the island accompanied, but in silence. At other seemingly random times, his legs were shackled. He wrote of the silence and solitude he was forced to endure, quote, "So profound is my solitude that I often seem to be lying in my tomb." After much controversy, he was pardoned in 1899 and declared innocent on July 12, 1906 by a military commission. That same day, he was readmitted into the army as a major, and 1 week later was inducted as a Knight of the Legion of Honor, the highest French order of merit. Dreyfus's arm was injured in an assassination attempt in 1908, a couple of months after he retired from the army at the age of 48. He was not done serving his country, however, and re-entered the military in World War I. He played a role behind the lines of the Western Front as a commander out on front lines in 1917 at Verdun and Chaman-de-Dam. His degree of distinction in the Legion of Honor was upgraded to officer. 29 years after he was exonerated, he passed away in Paris. The penal colony of Cayenne was phased out slowly and was terminated in 1953. The island sat without much use until the late 20th century when they began attracting tourists. The old warden's quarters on Royal Island are now a hotel, and the majority of the jail cells are overrun by flora. The San Marino Prison. A single prisoner was held for 9 months starting in January of 2011 in the only jail in the enclave microstate of San Marino, located within Italian territory. The prison was set up in the wing of a former Capuchin monastery on the flanks of a limestone outcrop. The most serene republic of San Marino boasts of 1,700 years of independent republican governance, making it the oldest republic in the world. Yet it's only 61.2 kilometers squared, or 23.6 square miles, only slightly bigger than Monaco and the Vatican. Its population barely surpasses 30,000 people, leading to an unsurprising negligible crime rate. The jail held 14 people up to 2009, but the numbers decreased until the 2011 detainee became a single prisoner. Meals were provided by a local restaurant, and the prisoner was granted 1 recreational hour outdoors per day. The government of San Marino never revealed his name due to their privacy policy. The country mainly serves as a tax haven that, despite the lack of internal crime, has had its banking capital deeply linked to illegal international activities such as money laundering.